Every year, we all have those guys that we just cannot stop drafting. In this episode of IDP Drafts, Jake and I discuss the IDP that we find ourselves taking over and over again in D-Up, in 2025 only contests, and in some of our rookie drafts that are mostly in our rearview mirror, but I know I still have at least one left to go. But along the way, we'll make sure that we hit all of the big positions. We'll share our personal ADP for where we've been taking these guys relative to market ADP, and also highlight some observations and a few data nuggets about why we like these players so much. Welcome to IDP Drafts.
Hey, Scott. Great to see you again. Excited to talk about some of our favorite drafts, or some of our favorite prospects in these drafts here, and the ones that I can't stop drafting, right? Like there's always a reason that we like these guys, and I can't wait to dive into all those points with you. But that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to break it down by D-Up. We're going to kind of take some observational, anecdotal things about their situations, right? Then we want to look at, some sort of data nugget, right? Dig in a little bit beyond the surface to say, hey, here's what we're seeing. Probably going to help explain why we're excited about these players. And then really level set that with where are they actually being drafted? Because in the end, that is probably the most important piece of context that will matter, because everyone's really draftable. It just depends on the price you got to pay to draft them. That said, we're going to jump right into your team and your first player on the D upside. Who do you got?
So I find myself drafting Logan Wilson over and over again. So linebacker, Cincinnati Bengals. He is a guy who I'm not just being a homer. I'm a Bengals fan, and honestly, some of that probably does come into my drafting. You're going to hear me talk about some guys that you've heard me talk about before, but it just shows you I'm a man of my word. So when I talk about someone here, I actually am running out and getting a ton of shares of them. Logan Wilson is someone who we brought up a little bit before in passing. The general observation that makes me so interested just from a gut perspective is the fact that they let Pratt walk, with only Demetrius Knight and Oren Burks really there to be the replacements, and Knight still being unsigned, which I feel like is a sneaky underreported story about how your Texans ruined the entire market for second round picks. And I believe as of our recording right now, only 3 have signed because they're all looking for that fully guaranteed money that Jaden Higgins got. So thanks for that. The Bengals are actually standing up and trying to help the league with Shamar Stewart and what we're doing there, and Trey Hendrickson to a lesser extent. And then your Texans are just, messing it up for everybody. But I digress. The fact that they let Pratt walk, and the fact that they have not been willing to give Demetrius Knight that fully guaranteed contract that he wants shows me they have every confidence in the world that Logan Wilson is going to be fully back from his injury, back to the role he was at before and alongside Jermaine Pratt for the past few years. And the data point is that that's a good spot to be in. If you look at his ranking in in D-Up scoring, so we got to remember we switch scorings a little bit ever so slightly here, but since we're talking D-Up, I pulled D-Up scoring numbers. If the contest would have happened last year, he would have been LB 17 before he got hurt. And if you look back to 2023, he would have finished as LB 17. So he's not that very top end guy that you need to run out and get in your drafts, but his current D-Up ADP is 50.8. He's being drafted as LB 25. So he's being drafted as a spot that he hasn't been in the past 2 years. He's been almost a full tier higher than LB 25 at 17 each of the last 2 seasons, again, holding injury constant. I've been overdrafting him a little bit. My ADP is 44.9. So I have been trying to get more shares of him, but I also find myself doing a lot of more conservative builds in D-Up where I like to use the middle rounds to get some safe linebackers and have some bigger upswings in the beginning with a DL and at the end, usually with a DB lately. So Logan Wilson is someone who I just can't stop drafting. He is my most rostered player. in D up, and so obviously my most rostered linebacker as well, and just love the guy as a Bengals fan, as a fan of football. Watching him play is always a good time.
Yeah, I mean, some of the things you talk about, right? Like Pratt's gone. They also had Akeem Davis Gaither there, right? They let him walk. He was someone who stepped into that full-time role in Logan Wilson's absence, right? And they had all these opportunities to keep veterans in place and do these other things, and they said no. We know what we got. We like what we got. We want to go forward with this. So I think you nailed it there. And I have to say, there's been plenty of fun times, I feel like, for us in DF drafts where we've participated together. When it gets to the end of that 5th or early 6th, right? And I'm like, oh, Scott's going to go next. I'm like, I think I might take Logan Wilson here just as a one, because it is a great value. And two, it's always fun to give you a little jab for your home team. So
yeah, and saving me from myself too, because I'm already pretty heavy in Logan Wilson. I probably would be, I wouldn't probably, there has been at least 2 drafts that I can remember vividly, hoping that you picking right before me would not be Logan Wilson. So my exposure would be even higher if not for you, but who knows, that may end up helping me out in the long run. So even though I was cursing you in those moments, I may be thanking you when it's all said and done. But moving right along, I know we have another linebacker. This is someone who you've drafted a lot more heavily than I have in the D-Up contest. Tell us about who you can't stop drafting at linebacker in D-Up.
Well, you're going with a home state player on your side, but you also love the Bengals. I'm going with a home state guy. I'm not a Packers fan, but I really can't stop drafting Edgerrin Cooper, linebacker for the Green Bay Packers. I'm currently taking him at about a 27% rostership across all my teams. So I got 33 entries already max entered for the D up. So if they got another one coming through, if we finish out this last one, I'm rearing to go for another one. But that said, looking at what is it about Edgerrin Cooper's situation that gets us excited, or at least me specifically? He finally got his chance at the end of the year last year, right? Unfortunately, an injury occurred to Quay Walker. We never love to see injuries to our players, but he was out weeks 16, 17, and 18. And also the biggest game of the season last year as well. No, excuse me. Quay Walker was not out that game. But those 3 games that Quay was out, we saw Cooper get near full 100% snap participation. And we did see in their wild card game, Cooper go up to 100% snap count with Quay healthy and in the lineup as well. So clearly, to the same point you have, right? Like how the Bengals were saying or showing us that they believe in Logan Wilson moving forward. I think the Packers showed us the same exact thing at the end of last year as well. One of my favorite things when I look at his end of the year performance, and he was really, really good in that fantasy football playoff run for us as well. So I'm sure a lot of people have that memory of Edgerrin Cooper. But when I look at specifically that week 16, 17, and 18, where he was the guy, right? And they're like, hey, go out there and do this for us. Now, I apologize. I did do this in Big 3 scoring. I forgot to make the conversion, but
they're close. So it's not a huge difference.
That's true. He had 14.5 in week 16, 24.25, and then 12.25. Now, obviously, the big splash one there in the middle was great. But when looking at how he achieved those, he didn't have a single splash play in any of those weeks. So what you're looking at is that's his floor. Right. And now if we're talking about a guy who can average, somewhere between 15 to 18 points as his floor, and he's healthy for the 17, obviously we always want that. I mean, you're talking his baseline's 220, 230, 240 points. And now you factor in the upside that we've seen with some of his pass rushing capabilities. I mean, how can you not want that guy, especially when you look where he's going? My ADP, I had him around 24. The overall ADP has about 24. So I'm sitting there right about where the market is, but it can kind of vary a little bit draft to draft. So we're talking, somewhere at the early part of the 3rd round. I'm willing to jump in a little bit earlier than that, even on him at times too, to make sure I get him, especially if you got Mike Woolard in one of your drafts, because he loves Edgerrin Cooper in the 2nd rounds there. So just some insider knowledge for you if you get in one of those drafts with him going forward. But again, I think we got a phenomenal floor, phenomenal upside, and a team ready to unleash it. All that said, Edgerrin Cooper, can't stop drafting him in D-Up.
I like Cooper. He's someone that I don't have much in my portfolio, and that's more because of my risk aversion, honestly. Like, you laid out a great great case for him, especially that fact that he had no splash plays those weeks. And so you really were looking at a floor. The reason why I have a little bit of pause is just the other guys that are going around him are guys I'm very heavy on. So Cooper is being drafted in D up, like you mentioned. His ADP is 24.2. That makes him linebacker 10 in the D up contest. The linebacker 9 is Caden Ellis, who I am very heavy on. Linebacker 11 is Spillane, who I'm not as jazzed up about. But then when you get to linebacker 12, you got Blake Cashman, who has a lot of that big play upside that we like to hope Cooper has. And I like Cooper as a high floor, we don't know what the ceiling is kind of play. But I find myself gravitating more towards Ellis and Cashman around Cooper because we know what their ceiling is. And they may be a little bit overdrafted. People are probably buying them at closer to a ceiling. But I think that's what's led me to not have as many shares of Cooper. But you make a good case. So if they do end up firing up another one of these, or as we do more of our best balls that we're running through the show, I'll be giving Cooper a second or third look in some instances. But in terms of guys that I take a second or third or fourth or fifth look at in all the times that I draft them, it's Travon Walker, defensive lineman for the Jacksonville Jaguars. He is my most rostered defensive lineman across all of the D-Up contests. This is one place where I'm just a little bit below ADP, so I'm getting a little bit of value. His ADP in the contest is 38, which makes him DL 20. My ADP is 40.1, so good for me, getting two spots worth of value on average when I get him. The reason why I find myself at an instinctual level being interested in drafting him is the fact that the Jaguars are committed to him. I know there's a lot of conversation about just how good of a football player he is, and there's been lots of questions like that with other IDP that have been very successful for us in the past. What I see is that they picked up his fifth-year option, and they didn't add any snap competition at edge. So it seems like regardless of what we think of his talent level, the Jaguars are bought in to this guy, and he's going to have a very prominent role. And that also leads me to the data point. He had 911 snaps in 2025. That is the 11th most among defensive linemen. And the thing that's interesting about this, because if you do PFF has so much great data. I could spend just days in their databases. But when you look at defensive linemen by snaps, you see a lot of clustering, for defenses that just happen to be on the field a lot. So, there'll be two teammates. And it's like, how much of this is the team just got a lot of snaps versus this guy is just a snap monster? The thing that excites me about Walker is Josh Hines-Allen, who is also a phenomenal player, had almost 100 less snaps last year than Travon Walker. So when one of them rotates off, it's not Walker. And even if the Jags defense gets better, which means less snaps on the field, he is not going to be coming off the field based on what we've seen last year. I know it's a new DC, and there's always mitigating factors that could throw a wrench in that. But as DL20, a guy who finished much higher than DL20 last season in terms of if there would have been a fast draft contest, I believe he would have been an early DL2. But either way, Travon Walker is someone who I'm very heavy on in fast draft, and I'm glad to be, because he seems like a pretty nice upside play that you can get there. Like I said, his ADP is 38. So you get him end of the third, beginning of the fourth. My ADP is 40.1. So getting him at the beginning of that fourth, that feels like good value to me.
Yeah, I love it. And I think, when you look at that snap comparison you talked about, and, spoiler alert, Josh Hines-Allen later in the show. But when you talk about that, it really does make sense when you look at who Travon Walker is and what he can do on first and second down in the run game. That never was Josh Hines-Allen's strong suit or calling card. So it is very likely that he is going to see less overall snaps and thus limit his opportunity to make plays. Whereas Walker, like you said, he's found a way to be I don't, please don't hear what I'm not saying, right? Like Max Crosby light, right? Like, I mean, I'm not trying to like,
All right, we
right,
heard it here first.
right. Cut it, snip it. Jake says Travon Walker, Max Crosby light. But I mean, that kind of volume, you're going to have such an amazing floor. And you're right. It's nothing they've done is lead us to believe that that's going to change his ability to pass rush from the outside, inside, have a strong stance in the run game. That's not going to change. He's going to be a volume monster. It's going to keep going. So it's an amazingly safe pick. Like you said, a little bit of risk aversion for you. Me, I do worry that he lacks a bit of the upside, even with the volume, just based on he has progressed, but he hasn't progressed maybe in the way I would hope to be able to make that pick sometimes. I definitely have him in my portfolio because it's still a solid pick. Just maybe not the one I'm making as much as you are.
Mm-hmm. And DL13, I looked it up while you were praising how good the pick is. I'm just going to remember that part and not so much how you landed the plane there. But DL13 in last year's contest, if there would have been a contest last year. So might that have been the high watermark for him? Possibly. But we'll just have to see. But our next player is someone who we're in agreement on. I think he is my second most heavily rostered defensive lineman, which makes it, again, really fun to draft with you. And I'm glad you're out of entries and I have one left. I was in the very first fast draft contest, and I am planning to be in the very last one of the contest as well. We'll see if I end up sticking with that. But tell us why you can't stop drafting Mr. Alex Highsmith.
Oh, I love me some Alex Highsmith. Some people talk about being overweight on things. I might be the most overweight here. I'm nearly 40% rostership, right? 37.1. So 2 out of every 5 times I'm drafting, I am ending up with Highsmith on my roster. Probably not the smart case, but man, I don't know why. When I see him there in those spots and the names around him, I truly cannot help myself. So that said, we talked about Travon Walker, being a volume monster. Highsmith was not that last year. Unfortunately, injuries derailed this season. But he's someone that he can be, right? When we look at when he was healthy and some of that, early in the season and late in the season. So even when players like, second year players like Nick Herbig have had a chance to establish themselves, and other young talent that they've brought in through draft to try and supplement that pass rush. It didn't matter. Once he was on the field, he was taking so many snaps, right? He was averaging around 47 snaps per game. And when you just look at, I think of I ran the numbers for like the last 10 years in the NFL, on average, a defense plays about 63 snaps a game. Obviously, give or take, right? Things happen, overtimes, ball control, blah, blah, blah. But I mean, if you're just saying on the average 63 snaps a game, he's only missing out on somewhere between 15 to 16 snaps a game. When they have competent other pass rushers to put in there, and he's got TJ Watt on the other side, it's like they clearly want him out on the field. And when I look at, okay, well, if he's going to be out on the field, what does that look like? Well, he does a little bit of everything, right? He has a 3 tackle per game average, right? So now we're setting a decent little floor, right? We're not looking at any goose eggs, which can be helpful in some cases when we're throwing together small best ball lineups, right? Very shallow. We want to make sure we're at least progressing somewhat each week. But also, he's among the top 25 pass rush win percentage in the NFL. I mean, and this is even when you look at, he's got some of the lowest snap counts and still the overall best, or excuse me, top 10 best win percentage rate too. So he's not getting the opportunity to really inflate these numbers. And it's not some small sample size where he's got like 100 pass rush snaps, right? He's still got, 500 opportunities last year. And he really turned that into really, really great productivity numbers. And maybe he didn't get the sacks we'd like to see. I think he only ended up with 6 sacks per PFF, but that was on 48 pressures. So when we look at that number again too, that is a little deflated in the terms of the number of sacks he should have got. I would expect some very positive regression for him. And if he can keep all of that in line with what he's done last year and the previous years in terms of his ability to win snaps against the offensive line, to create pressure on the quarterback, he's going to deliver some great numbers for us. I'm very confident in that. maybe too confident, as again, my rostership is pretty darn heavy, but it falls basically in line with what we see out there on D-Up. Looking at their ADP, last time I took a measure, it was 23.25. I'm sitting at 21.4. I'm a little bit ahead of the curve, probably just because I want to make sure I have them on my roster, but I'm willing to take that chance for the 2025 season here on Alex Highsmith.
And I know that there are believers in Nick Herbig, based on how he performed when he got on the field, and people even like Jack Sawyer, who the Steelers just drafted to throw bodies at defensive end there. But if you follow the money, there is no. You mentioned how he doesn't come off the field. Once he was good, and he stayed good. They paid him too. He's the 18th highest paid edge rusher in the NFL, on a team that also has the number 1 highest paid edge rusher in the NFL. So he's not going to be coming off the field unless he gets hurt. And I don't think we've seen the best out of him. So I absolutely love Highsmith, especially for D-Up, because I could see him having a Josh Hines-Allen kind of season from a couple of years ago, where he either leads the league or is close to the league lead in sacks. I hate that as a Bengals fan, because it doesn't bode well for Joe Burrow's health and all the money we just paid him. But Highsmith, to me, is a phenomenal play. And before we move on out of D-Up and into just some more general leagues, especially thinking about defense relative to offense and some of the IDP that we keep taking in those combined leagues, if you haven't checked out D-Up, at last glance, I believe it was about 82% full. So there's only about 20 or so D-Up drafts left before it is filled. We have a great show promo code. The IDP show gets you up to a $50 deposit match. And here's a little bit more if you are new to the contest.
The Super Bowl is the biggest event in sports, but Jalon Carter makes big plays and very few fantasy gamers care. That's going to change with the D-Up contest on Fast Draft. You draft 6 defenders. The top 4 enter your lineup every week. You can draft up to 30 teams. There's a $10,000 prize pool. And if you love Aiden Hutchinson, you can get big exposure to that guy. And every time he's making plays for the Lions, you're making money. It's such an easy game to play, and it's so fun to sweat both sides of the ball on Sundays. Of all the Fast Draft contests, it's the D-Up game that I think is going to really change how people play fantasy. Now use your host promo code to get a $50 deposit match when you deposit on Fast Draft. So, let's start drafting faster.
All right, so moving on from D-Up, I do that state of IDP survey every year, and one of the things that it always tells us is most people play defense with offense. And so we run some combined best ball leagues, but we wanted to think a little bit about, even when we have the choice of going offense, who are some of those IDP that we can't stop drafting in these kinds of formats. So for me, it's a name. Again, I'm a man of my word. You heard me talk about him last episode when we were talking about the combined drafts. I'm going to talk about him again today and find new little wrinkles and nuggets to share. Because for me, it's Micah Parsons. I have taken Micah Parsons in 2 out of 3 of the combined best ball drafts that we've done since we relaunched the format to make it a little bit shorter, a little bit snappier. He is the clear alpha in Dallas. He has been for some time, even as Tank Lawrence was there. Tank Lawrence is now gone. There's not a really prominent, I feel like they may have brought in like a Dante Fowler or someone like that to be there opposite him, but he's no one who is going to take away from Parsons snaps in any way, shape, or form. He's also in line for an extension. People have been talking a lot about players who haven't gotten extended yet. Parsons has not gotten extended yet. And if you look at not just fantasy, but reality, he is one of the best edge rushers in the NFL. And he is significantly younger than TJ Watt, who the Steelers just grossly overpaid for. So Parsons should blow Watt's contract out of the water, or if he doesn't, then it just shows the Steelers overpaid. And I'm sure someone's going to clip this and send it to me every time Watt sacks Burrow. But you know what? I'll take it. They just have a lot of money. They have money tied up in edges like we have money tied up in wide receivers. You still have to field a whole lot of other positions, and we'll see how it works out for either of us. But back to Parsons. Parsons is great because he's a dual desi. We know how people like dual desi guys, especially the shorter your benches are in your combined leagues. If you're playing in sleeper, the better it is to have dual desi guys, because you want to have that versatility. If you're not talking about 10, 15 IDP on your bench, if you're only talking 6 to 10, and whether it's best ball or whether it's even, your redraft where you're setting lineups, having that versatility to put them in either spot is really fantastic. The data point that I was able to pull on Parsons is he averaged 5.38 pressures per game last year per PFF. That is the highest in the league, other than Aiden Hutchinson, who I think was at 9 point something, but he only had a very small sample size. Like, there's no universe where he was going to end the season with, 200 pressures and 50 sacks or whatever it ends up being. So Parsons was incredibly productive. I know he was banged up a little bit last year, but he is still going very early. He's been either the first or second IDP taken in most of the combined drafts that we're in. I have 100% exposure. I think someone just took him from me in the third one. So I have 66% exposure of the 3 leagues that we've done in this format. And other redraft leagues, I've been snatching him up if I can, even breaking my tendency of waiting to completely fill offense and work on my offensive bench before going defense. I wanted to get ahead of the market a little bit at edge so I wouldn't have to agonize over who to play week to week. And Parsons is someone who I won't be agonizing about. In those combined leagues, I mentioned his ADP was 73.5, and this is a league where we're starting 6 offense, 6 defense, and 6 bench. So he's being drafted basically that round right after offenses are getting full. Well, actually, no, he's being drafted in the 6 because these are 12 teamers. I was thinking more D up. So he is being drafted in the 6 while teams are still filling their offense. I've taken him before getting my last offensive player on a couple of occasions now. So his ADP is 73.5. My ADP is 73.5 because I pulled this ADP after only 2 drafts had been completed, and I'm the one who took them both places. So I think he went a little bit earlier in the most recent one we're doing, so I'm going to look like I'm getting a little bit of value there. But everything has been said about Micah Parsons. Just get yourself some shares of Micah Parsons, because it's going to make football more fun for you to watch, because he is one of those fun players who you cannot take your eyes off of.
You just make me regret. I teared down with Micah Parsons in my home league to pick up Will Anderson in draft capital, because I had emptied the cabinets in the previous season to make a championship run, which fell short in the championship game, unfortunately. But that said, it just makes me long for him, because he is amazing. You talk about 5 pressures a game, 5+. It's like that's literally in line to average a sack a game. So now you're talking his floor is 17 sacks a game, analytically speaking here, right? Don't again, someone's gonna clip that and be like, he had a 10 sack season, be like, oh, Jake said he's gonna have 17, 18 sacks.
But you know what? When he has 23 sacks, I'll clip it and be like, see, Jake's a hater. He does not
right?
ever believe in Parsons.
This is why he traded him.
No matter what, you're getting receded, so just
right?
pray for it.
I love it. So no, Parsons is a great one. On the flip side, I like someone, he's not as elite as Micah Parsons, but I think he's still got a lot of value for us. We talked about his running mate earlier in Travon Walker. So we're looking at, of the Jacksonville Jaguars, Josh Hines-Allen, dual desi here on the sleeper platform, DL linebacker. He's only 2 years removed from 17.5 sacks, tied for second in the league that year, behind Mr. Overpaid himself, TJ Watt. But yeah, you look at what they've done now this last year. I think they've really kind of revamped their team. I struggle to say this as a Texans fan, but I do believe the Jaguars have positioned themselves to be a very competitive team this year. They bring in Travis Hunter, who, if he's strong on the defensive side right now there's an opportunity where the pass rush can win with 4, right? Because they got enough talent on the back end. Actually, maybe helps out on offense, keeps games into more of a fast-paced shootout type of thing. Now they got a chance to pin their ears back and go there because the offense is doing its job. I think there's just a lot of positives overall around the Jaguars, especially for a guy who, again, has shown he can do it even in down situations for his team, down years overall. And they just keep him running out there. Now, he's not running out at Travon Walker level numbers, but over the last 3 years, when you look at total snaps by all edge rushers, he was 19th, 16th, and 3rd over the last 3 seasons in total snaps. Sounds like to me they're putting him out there, and you totally nailed it. They didn't do anything to make us think that he's not coming off the field, or that we got other people going on and to replace them. So I think it's fair to look at that and expect a little bit more of the same of what we've seen. Again, you look at what he does in terms of pressuring the quarterback, 13.43% career pressure rate. So 1 out of every 8 pass rush snaps, he's pressuring the quarterback. Last 3 seasons, that's up at 16%, right? So again, as he's progressed, as he's grown these last 3 years, we're really seeing what he is. He also had his worst tackle performance of the year last year, where, again, tackles aren't something we rely heavily on for our defensive linemen, but it gives us that floor. Again, he was 4.6% tackle efficiency last year, whereas, again, the previous 2 years, 5.34, and even up above 6%. Now, those don't sound like amazing numbers, especially when you look at like tackle efficiency for linebackers. We love seeing 13, 14, 15%. But when you're talking about a defensive lineman who's playing 820, 880, 900 plus snaps in a season, 6% is going to add up pretty quickly for you over the length of the season. So he's got everything I look for in terms of talent. He's got that dual desi to boost us in shallow benches. And his IDP looks like he's going pretty much spot on, right there in the early to mid part of the 9th round. I got him in one of the drafts at 905. I was hoping to get him in the 9th round again at that same time, or in that next one. However, he went 903. So that leaves a perfect middle there of 904 is the average for him, ADP 111.5.
And it goes to show you that there is really good value, because that's 3 rounds after I'm taking Parsons.
Yep.
And I could have filled up my offense and then got some offensive bench. And then still, if Josh Allen was my LBDL1, my top IDP, taking him, essentially 40 picks later, you can still build a hell of an IDP roster by waiting a little bit. So I like Allen, especially, like I said, with that dual desi is usually more of a tiebreaker for me. But again, depending on your league settings and how short your benches are, it can play a bigger factor. So I think that's just another feather in his cap. So love me some Josh Hines-Allen. I believe I have him. I've been walking away with either him or Travon Walker in most of my D-ups. And so my combined exposure there is probably like 60, 70%. So I have a lot of Jacksonville edge rushers. So I'm high on Hines-Allen as well. But moving into our last position, we got to give some love for the DBs. And like you, I went with a very late round DB. I went with the latest round DB according to our leagues. And it's because, again, I just take him. And that's Marcus Jones. So Marcus Jones, people have a very short memory about how much we loved Marcus Jones 3 years ago in his rookie season. How he was coming out on offense and getting us touchdowns on offense, and how he was a prolific kick returner and a prolific punt returner and only a part-time IDP. And then he had an injury, and then he started playing more defense. And so he started not returning kicks, not necessarily being used on the offense as much, just a handful of snaps in the following seasons. But there's a new coaching staff there in New England. New England has a lot of question marks in a lot of places, and I'll be really curious to see how they end up deploying him. Picking any CB is a crapshoot, and anyone will acknowledge that. So to me, Jones is a CB with CB1 potential. He plays primarily slot, so that is the sweet spot for CB scoring. So that's good. If it's a league with return yards, then I fully stand by that statement, because he is slotted in as the primary punt returner once again. We'll see how much, again, new coaching staff, how much they want to use his talents at kick returner as well, and if they want to sprinkle him in on some offense. So in 2024, he was the primary slot returner and the primary punt returner. In 2022, he was a kick returner and an offensive weapon. If we even get those first two, he has CB1 potential. If we get even sprinkles of the 2022 role that he played, then the ceiling just goes up and up and up for him. His ADP is currently 216.5. 216 is the last pick in the draft. So I took him at 216 in one draft. He went undrafted in the other one. And that's just because I tried a DB early strategy and wasn't about to take a fourth DB in the last round when I still needed a wide receiver, which, fun fact, there's been some decent wide receivers left over at the very end of those drafts. So I've been punting a little bit more there and going a little bit RB heavy, but we don't want to talk too much offense and lose people. But to me, he's a great last round of your draft flyer, especially if you're in, actually, I shouldn't say especially, even if you're in a league with short benches, he has a lot of upside. If you're in a league with deep benches, people aren't drafting him, so he's going to be there for you. So Marcus Jones is a guy that I plan on drafting in a ton of the IDP only leagues that we do, but even in combined leagues, especially combined leagues that score return yards. And if he has any of those offensive touches, you don't have to worry about looking up if in this league, do we score receptions and things? It's an offense league. So if he gets a catch, he gets a catch. So Marcus Jones, DB, New England Patriots, a guy I just cannot stop drafting.
I love it. Yeah, it is funny how fickle things can be. And I get it. IDP tends to be a little bit greater variance in terms of year-to-year stuff. But I mean, yeah, when he burst onto the scene a few years back, man, everyone was just all about him. And I saw leagues where people were trading up to get him, right? Because here's the cheat code, right? Here, Deion Sanders 2.0. And here we are, last pick, Mr. Irrelevant of the combined best ball draft for you. And yeah, I'm totally in with you. I love that you talked about the slot utilization, right? I haven't ran the numbers recently for the last year, but historically you've seen anywhere between like a 2 to 2.5, maybe even 3% difference in tackle efficiency between corners who line inside versus outside. And again, sounds like small numbers, but when you're talking about you're going to put this out over 800, 900, 1,000 snaps for some of these defenders, it goes a long way real fast, right? You're talking about a guy who gets 60 tackles a year versus a guy who gets 85 tackles. And now you're like, okay, now we're starting to creep up into that higher end DB range. And then, like you said, a little bit of this, a little bit of kick return, a little bit of punt return, some specific snaps on offense. Yeah, this is a great value for us. I'm very excited to see what he can be this year for us. And I hope he returns to form like we saw earlier in his career.
And I know you are also a fan of another part of the Patriots secondary. So which part of the Patriots secondary can you not stop drafting?
I'm going to draft the Patriots secondary that really just thinks he's a linebacker. And that's Kyle Duggar, defensive back for the New England Patriots, right? He basically lines up like he's a linebacker. And do we love linebackers alignment and how they get tackles? We absolutely do. So if you can come out here and say, hey, here's a guy in Kyle Duggar who over his career has lined up 49.39% of his snaps inside the box. 1 out of every 2 plays, he's just a linebacker. And then the rest of it, he's a defensive back. Well, wait, what does he do? Does he run back into the deep half? No. Then he slides over into the slot for 17.9% of his snaps. Okay, well, then that's still really good, but then the rest is deep. No, then he takes another 6% along the defensive line. So you're talking 73.13% of this guy's alignment is somewhere down inside the box, lined up on the line or lined up close inside in the nickel defender role. 1 out of every 4 snaps, he's actually back playing defensive back, right, on the outside or deep. How can you not love a guy who spends that much time that close to the line, where we see historically time and time again, those are the people who are going to have better overall performances. The only thing that I hesitate with Kyle Duggar is he has struggled with injuries over the past several years. So when you talk about a combined best ball with shallow benches and you're not taking a whole lot of stabs at defensive back, you are really putting a lot of chips on a guy who you're like, I need you out there, sir. but when you are out there, I know you're going to give it to me. So I ended up taking him about middle of the 15th in both of our combined best ball drafts. I absolutely love that value. I would take him there every single time if he continues to be there. So you're talking, fourth pick from the end. I'm getting a guy who is basically, linebacker light in my DB slot. So give me all the Kyle Duggars, and I cannot stop drafting him in the middle of the 15th.
And you mentioned the injury risk, but I think that's one of the fun things about any kind of combined league, but especially the combined drafts that we're doing, is if you know that you have other DBs in place that might have a higher floor but a lower ceiling, then you can afford to take a third DB. Because you have, the way those leagues are set up is, one DL, one LB, one DB, and then 3 flex. So someone like Duggar is great for a build where you have some more sure things, because it's not like I love our IDP only best balls, but in our IDP only best balls, you can walk away with 9 or 10 DBs to fill those 4 slots. You're not going to be walking away with 9 or 10. That would be a very, very bold strategy to walk away with 9 or 10, unless you're talking about guys like Carly's that has a dual desi where he can be a linebacker for you. And I think Jeremy Chin still is dual desi. So if they're in the portfolio, you'd still be missing a D lineman there. I can't think of a D lineman / DB dual desi off the top of my head. I feel like there was one a couple of years ago, but no, Duggar is someone who, if you build your roster right, not right, but you can build your roster around a guy like Duggar and figure out how you're going to be more or less risk averse, or how many stabs you want to take at the position based on that. But, anybody can get injured. Nobody thought Hutch was going to get injured last year, and they didn't bake that in. And just because someone has had a bad run of injuries, doesn't necessarily make them injury prone. It just means they had a bad run of injuries. If they're recovered from it, then I'm not worried about someone being injury prone. So I think all the other metrics you mentioned for Duggar there are a great, great sales pitch.
Well, speaking of players that have maybe experienced an injury and might have been affecting some things here recently, maybe not too much, but who is the rookie, Scott, that you can't stop drafting?
Yeah, so I think between you and I, we've probably done 10, 15 rookie drafts at this point. I still have one left. Do you have any, or all of yours in your review? Okay, so we each have one left. But the one guy who doesn't need a sales pitch, it's hard to come up with new things to talk about him, but that's Abdul Carter. So I've talked about Abdul Carter several times over the course of the season of this show. And again, this is me showing you that I'm not just saying that, I'm investing my hard-earned draft capital in him. So my observation, same as it's always been, to temper expectations a little for 2025. You have Brian Burns, you have Kayvon Thibodeau, but you don't draft a player as highly as the Giants drafted Carter for him to not get any snaps. I think everyone expects sort of like a Highsmith kind of situation of, once he takes off, it's going to be his role. I know they picked up Tibbs' 5th-year option, so that means a little bit of uncertainty even for 2026. But I can't imagine, once Carter flashes in 25, he's not going to be in a full-time role in 26. The data point, I had to do some digging because I had to find something that I don't think anyone has found yet. And if they have, then I apologize, and be happy to cite someone else. But I just went as the one half of the IDP drafts research department, digging through PFF grades from the past several years in college. And what I found was that Abdul Carter had a 90+ pass rush grade each of his last 2 seasons in college, which you may have heard before. He's a good pass rusher. But I wanted to look up just how rare that is for someone to post back-to-back seasons of 90+ pass rush grades before entering the NFL. I went back to 2020, and I found only 4 instances. So it was Carter, Leatu Latu, Chop Robinson, and Nick Bonito. That's it. There have been lots of guys who have had 1 year, oftentimes their senior year, where they'll really flourish, or their last year before they enter the draft, where they'll really flourish, or guys that will have a great sophomore year and take a step back their junior year, but still be decently drafted. But Carter, as consistent. He's a unicorn. He's someone who, and if you think back to NFL drafts since 2020, there's a lot of big names that aren't on there. Like Hutchinson is fantastic, but didn't have the same kind of college numbers that Carter had. Alex Highsmith, who we talked about earlier, Will Anderson, who was very highly drafted. These guys who we think a lot of for good reason still weren't able to do the things in college that Carter was able to do. So I am a man of my word. I've been drafting him, my personal ADP, and I pulled this from my 12-team leagues, 12-team combined leagues, because that's going to be the most applicable for how most people play IDP based on, again, that state of IDP survey data that says leagues are primarily dynasty and primarily combined. So I'm taking him early to mid second round. My ADP is 15.5. And you and I were both in an auction together, and that auction just wrapped up, and I was able to get him in the auction. And what I ended up paying for him was the DE10 price. So I think DE10 for Dynasty is a pretty reasonable starting point for Carter, a guy who could very easily go up as we have some of the guys ahead of him that are aging. I know Watt just signed a 3-year deal, but Watt is not young anymore. I know Hendrickson wants a bunch of money. Hendrickson is, I believe, already 31. So there are some guys that are clearly ahead of him, but the arrow is definitely pointing up for Carter, and he's someone who I wanted to get a lot of exposure to. I was willing to spend even a late first on him and haven't had to do that yet. I've been able to get him mid-second and in essentially a startup, get him as DE10, and very happy with that.
I wish there was something I could say that would like greatly add to this, or even somehow if I knew I could contradict it, but there's not. I mean, you nailed it. He's amazing. Yeah, you nailed it.
Thank you. Yeah, no, he nailed it. It's easy for me to do this when he does what he does on the field. So all credit to Abdul Carter. I'm just his hype man for, I think, the third time on our airwaves.
Oh, I love it. Well, I'm gonna go with another rookie that doesn't have the pedigree or the namesake per se of an Abdul Carter, but he is someone I think that we're gonna get to know a lot about here in his rookie year, and that's Jalon Walker, edge linebacker, Atlanta Falcons. So to me, it really leans into his opportunity, right? He landed in probably the best spot in terms of trying to win early playing time. And when I mean early playing time, I'm talking week 1. We could see this guy in some sort of strong or heavy rotation for playing time and early snaps. So I look at what he's got in front of him. You look at last year, players like Arnold Ebiketie, Grady Jarrett, Matthew Judon. Those were the top defensive linemen in terms of pressure, just pure volume overall for that team. 39, 34, and 25 respectively. Wasn't even top on their teams. Caden Ellis actually led the team with 43 pressures. Hence maybe why some smart, intelligent drafters really love him, Scott. But that's not a huge hill to overcome, especially for someone when you look at what he did in college. He had a 15.13% pressure rate while splitting time as a rusher, right? He had about 220-ish pass rush opportunities, about like 250 off-ball opportunities. And 15% of the time he's finding a way to get pressure on the quarterback, when some of those pass downs he was just in coverage purely because more than half of them was as an off-ball linebacker. I mean, this guy, I get it. That's college. We got to transition all those things. But that upside, that lack of talent in front of him, I just don't see how he doesn't get there. Early indications are he's the starter, lining up out there for snap 1. Again, does he take 60 snaps or does he take 16 snaps, right? I mean, we'll wait and see. But I got to imagine he's playing at least 50% of the snaps as an edge rusher by week 1. And when you look at where he's going, then we did our combined ADP data across a bunch of different rookie drafts that we were doing, and he was 37th. You're talking an early third to pick up this guy. When you look at where he was going in our combined best ball, he actually wasn't going. Again, it's shallow benches there. But if you're talking about trying to find a guy who can, with your Mr. Irrelevant pick or in that 18th round, a guy who could really make a difference potentially. Okay, well, if this guy comes in, he gets the volume, boom, all of a sudden we're talking 8, 9, 10 sacks, and now he's dual desi too. For that sake, I mean, it's a great guy who I was sad that I missed out on him as much as I did. But I think I got myself a little bit excited for some combined best balls going forward here for Jalon Walker of the Atlanta Falcons.
Mm-hmm. The other unique thing about him is he's not just dual desi in terms of sleeper. He is legitimately someone who could be playing edge or linebacker.
Yep.
And the fact that I just looked on MFL, he is, they only do one positional designation on MFL, and I get that. I like it in some ways, but he is a DE on MFL. So kind of a potential high upside DE, because I know you're talking about he's probably penciled in as the day one edge rush starter there because there isn't a lot of competition. I know they traded up to draft Jalen Pierce right after they drafted Walker, but Walker is going to be on the field. So whether it's in the linebacker role, which is awesome for IDP, or the edge role, which is awesome for IDP, he's going to be out there. And I think that makes him makes me jealous that he's not someone who I can't stop drafting, and that most of my drafts are done. So I'm not going to have many shares of him. But like you said, that's what's beautiful about combined best ball. I don't know that I've got the gumption to be able to take him in a D up, especially my last D up, that precious entry, because I'm not so sure about the certainty of him being like a top 60 player overall in his rookie year. But from a dynasty perspective, which is what we're talking about for rookie drafts, yeah, sign me up for Jalon Walker. If I had a time machine, he is someone who I would go back and be drafting a little bit more, especially at that ADP of getting him in the mid third in most of your drafts. It feels like pretty good value. Well, no, 37 would be like early fourth because that'd be 3 rounds done, and yeah, it'd be like 401, 402, which is even more. I was ready to buy him in the mid third. I don't have to. I can wait until the fourth and go. So yeah, I think Jalon Walker is a good person to be heavy on. So let us know who you're heavy on. We wanted to tell you all about the guys that we've been drafting and why we've been drafting them. So who have you been drafting? I'm curious to hear. Why have you not been taking Abdul Carter? Why have you all just been letting him fall to me in all of my leagues and everywhere I'm drafting? Who are we missing? Who are we off board on? We just love hearing from you, whatever you think about who it is that you can't stop drafting or what you think of some of the guys that we mentioned. The other thing that we love is drafting with you. We've been filling these combined leagues that are now this new shorter format that we unveiled a couple of weeks ago, and they've been a lot of fun. I can't speak for you, but I've been having an absolute blast with them. They're taking less than a week each to complete, which is a lot of fun. They're still slow timers, so it's not too much pressure. You got life, you got other stuff going on. We get it. That's totally fine. That's expected with this. But there's a lot of different strategies that can play out. I love that we're seeing some new faces. I love all of our regulars. Don't get me wrong. We need them regulars to keep things filling, and would love for you to get into some D-ups as well to try to get that closed and see if maybe we can get them to do something a little bit different and do something else with IDP here at the end of the season. But in the meantime, draft with us. Keep an eye out on Twitter for either Jake or I or the IDP show. Keep an eye out. I post a lot of the links on Reddit as well. We love drafting. That's why we host a show called IDP Drafts, and we would love for you to draft with us.
Yeah, get in there. It is hands down my new favorite format of this offseason, these combined best balls. And that's saying a lot because I love D up too. That's a great, enjoyable thing. But the combined best ball, you nailed it with your state of the IDP draft or state of the IDP survey. It's the combined, right? That's what makes things the most fun when you can watch a game and be like, I'm impacted by both sides of the ball here, right? Or you don't have any offensive players. Well, you could at least still have some defensive players on the field. So what you put together for the combined best ball is marvelous. I appreciate that you did it. And all I can ask is that some of you guys come here and try it out with us because I got a sneaking suspicion you're going to end up enjoying it quite a bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we have a very high recidivism rate where people draft with us and then want to come back, and sometimes someone's already taken a spot and says, "Hey, when are you launching another one?" It's, we'll do them as soon as we can. These are fun, but we're just two dudes running a bunch of best ball leagues and enjoying the hell out of it. But we're as soon as one ends, we usually fire up another one, because doing too many of these at once can lead to a little bit of distraction and a little bit of irritated looks from spouses as the phone is constantly dinging. So yeah, we're going to get more of these going. Come draft with us. And for all of your IDP needs, visit the idpshow.com. The draft kit is up there. So if you're getting ready for your redraft, if you're getting into some of these best balls, either that we're doing or that others are doing, I know Gary Van Dyke is doing the best ball breast cancer awareness best balls out there, which are an absolutely phenomenal cause. And if you want to do really well in those, we've got great best ball rankings for you to utilize. If you have a dynasty league that is getting ready for a late summer rookie draft, there's tons of great resources. I'm one of the rankers alongside Adam and Jason King for rookies, and we update these every month. So we're keeping them fresh as news happens. Everything you need, go to the idpshow.com. Be sure to check out all the other shows that we have, the IDP show, the IDP after show. You're going to get lots of useful wisdom for all the different formats that you love to play. And thank you for spending some time with us.
Yeah, great to have you guys. And all we can say is we'll see you in the draft room.